Welcome to Curiosities, hidden facts about cities for curious people. Manhattan is a city that looks impossible to hide. Everything seems exposed: the skyline, the traffic, the noise, the lights, the crowds, the money, the ambition. But the strangest Manhattan is not always above your head. Sometimes it is under your feet. Sometimes it is behind a gate. Sometimes it is inside a quiet room filled with dirt. Sometimes it is hidden in the acoustics of a train station. And sometimes it is standing at an ordinary address where one of America's most feared crime families once operated in plain sight. This is Curiosities, and today we are walking through 5 strange, real, and visitable curiosities in Manhattan. Not legends, not movie sets, not distant ruins. These are places a tourist can still find, photograph, hear, or stand in front of today. Let's begin with one of the smallest acts of resistance in New York City. In Greenwich Village, at the corner of 7th Avenue South and Christopher Street, there is a tiny triangle set into the sidewalk. Most people step over it without noticing. But if you look down, you will see a message in mosaic tiles. It says that this little piece of land belongs to the Hess estate, and that it has never been dedicated for public purposes. This is the Hess Triangle, and it may be one of the most stubborn pieces of private property in Manhattan. The story begins in the early 20th century, when New York was changing fast. Streets were being widened, subway construction was transforming neighborhoods, old buildings were demolished to make way for the modern city. One of those buildings belonged to the Hess family. After the city took the property, a tiny triangular piece was apparently left behind. It was too small to build on, too small to use, too small almost to matter. But the Hess family decided that it mattered. Instead of simply letting the city absorb it into the sidewalk, they marked it. They turned a few inches of leftover land into a permanent message. And that is why, more than a century later, people still stop in the village, look down, and find a private protest embedded in the public street. In most cities, rebellion is painted on walls. In Manhattan, it can be hidden in the pavement. The first curiosity is not impressive because it is large. It is impressive because it is tiny and still refuses to disappear. Now let's move from the sidewalk to a room that feels almost impossible in Manhattan. At 141 Worcester Street in SoHo, there is a second-floor space known as the New York Earth Room. From the outside, it does not look dramatic. You walk into a building in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city, climb upstairs, and enter a quiet gallery. And then you see it. A room filled with earth. Not a symbolic handful, not a small installation, an entire interior space covered with hundreds of cubic yards of soil. The New York Earth Room was created by artist Walter de Maria in 1977 and has remained there for decades. It is maintained by Dia Art Foundation and is open to the public on scheduled days. The strangeness of the place is hard to explain until you imagine the contrast. Outside, luxury stores, galleries, restaurants, tourists, real estate, fashion, and the endless machinery of SoHo. Inside, silence, white walls, and a field of dark earth that no one is allowed to walk on. It is one of the rare places in Manhattan where nothing is for sale, nothing is moving, and nothing is trying to attract your attention. It just exists. A room full of dirt in a city where every square foot has a price. That is what makes it powerful. Manhattan is obsessed with using space, selling it, renting it, building over it, dividing it, monetizing it. But here, in a neighborhood where apartments can cost millions, an entire room has been given to Earth. No furniture, no screens, no products, no skyline view, just soil. A tourist can visit it today, stand quietly at the edge, and feel something almost shocking. Manhattan stopping for a moment. The second curiosity is a room that turns the most valuable city space in America into something ancient, silent, and useless in the most beautiful way. Now let's go uptown to one of the busiest places in New York, Grand Central Terminal. Grand Central is not hidden. It is famous. Tourists look up at the ceiling, take photos of the clock, and cross the main concourse with thousands of commuters moving around them. But one of its strangest secrets is not in the main hall. It is downstairs, near the Oyster Bar. There, in a tiled archway, is the Whispering Gallery. Two people can stand at opposite diagonal corners of the arch, face the wall, and whisper. Not shout. Whisper. And the sound travels across the curved tile ceiling so clearly that the person in the opposite corner can hear it. In the middle of Manhattan, inside a massive train terminal, surrounded by footsteps, voices, and constant movement, a whisper survives. That is the magic of this place. It does not require a ticket. It does not require special access. It does not even look like an attraction at first. It looks like a passageway. But if you know where to stand, the architecture suddenly becomes a secret telephone. The Whispering Gallery is one of those Manhattan oddities that feels almost too simple to be real. A city famous for being loud has a hidden corner where quietness wins. And that is the third curiosity. In one of the noisiest places in New York, the strangest thing you can do is whisper into a wall and be heard. Now we go to the Upper West Side, where Manhattan hides something that feels like it belongs in another country. Between West 94th and West 95th Streets, between Broadway and West End Avenue, there is a private gated street called Pomander Walk. If you are not looking for it, you can easily miss it. But through the gates, you can see something unexpected. A small row of Tudor-style houses that looks more like an English village than New York City. Colorful doors, small windows, quiet gardens, low buildings. And outside the gates, Manhattan. Apartment towers, traffic, Broadway, noise, speed, density. Pomander Walk was built in the early 20th century and was inspired by a romantic English stage play of the same name. Instead of following the usual Manhattan pattern of tall buildings and straight lines, it created a miniature village inside the city. The result is surreal. You stand at the gate, look in, and for a second Manhattan seems to glitch. It is still New York, but it does not feel like New York. This is important. Pomander Walk is private. Tourists should not try to enter unless invited. But the curiosity is still verifiable from the street. You can stand respectfully outside the gates and see one of the strangest residential pockets in the city. And that is the fourth curiosity. A hidden English-style village, locked behind gates, surviving inside one of the densest parts of Manhattan. It is not a movie set. It is not a theme park. People actually live there. And maybe that is what makes it stranger. Because in Manhattan, fantasy usually becomes advertising. At Pomander Walk, it became real estate. And now, for the final curiosity, we enter a darker Manhattan. Not the fictional version of organized crime, but the real geography of it. Because some of the most infamous Mafia locations in New York were not hidden underground. They were on normal streets, behind storefronts, outside restaurants, in places tourists can still visit today. The first address is 247 Mulberry Street. This was the Ravenite social club, closely associated with John Gotti and the Gambino crime family. Today, it does not look like a criminal headquarters. That is exactly what makes it strange. It looks like part of a modern neighborhood. Shopping, restaurants, tourists, and Little Italy changing into something more polished. But for years, this address was linked to one of the most famous mob figures in America. John Gotti became known as the Dapper Don, a media figure as much as a crime boss. But the physical space connected to that image was not a mansion or a fortress. It was a storefront on Mulberry Street. The second address is 210 East 46th Street, Sparks Steakhouse. This is where, in 1985, Gambino boss Paul Castellano and Thomas Bellotti were shot outside the restaurant. The killing became one of the most famous mob assassinations in New York history and helped mark the rise of John Gotti. What makes Sparks so eerie is that it still functions as a restaurant. People go there for dinner, business meetings, and classic New York atmosphere. But the sidewalk outside carries another story. A story of power, betrayal, and violence in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. The third address is 129 Mulberry Street, the original location of Umberto's Clam house. In 1972, Joseph Crazy Joe Gallo was shot after celebrating his birthday. Today, Umberto's operates nearby at a different location, but the original address remains part of Little Italy's crime history. And again, the strange part is how ordinary the place feels now. A tourist can walk these streets, take photos, eat nearby, and never realize that the geography of American organized crime is right under their feet. These three addresses show a different kind of Manhattan secret. Not architectural, not acoustic, not artistic. Human, dangerous, and hidden in plain sight. So what do these 5 curiosities reveal? The Hess Triangle shows that Manhattan remembers even the smallest acts of resistance. The New York Earth Room shows that in a city obsessed with value, an empty room full of soil can feel almost sacred. The Whispering Gallery shows that New York can still reward silence. Pomander Walk shows that an English village can survive behind gates in the middle of the Upper West Side. And the Mafia addresses show that some of Manhattan's darkest stories were not distant legends. They happened at real doors, real sidewalks, and real restaurants. That is the Manhattan most tourists miss. Not because it is impossible to find, but because the city hides its strangest truths in ordinary places. A triangle in the pavement, a room full of earth, a whisper under Grand Central, a tiny village behind a gate, a storefront once watched by federal agents. Manhattan does not always ask you to look up. Sometimes it asks you to look closer. And when you do, the city changes, the postcard disappears, the map becomes deeper, and every corner starts to feel like it might be hiding a story. This is Curiosities. And in Manhattan, the strangest secrets are not always hidden. Sometimes they are waiting for you to notice.